Hello guys, welcome to Amazing Animals Whirlin' News. Only 51 of these U.S. whales remain. Little has been done to prevent their extinction. Even before they saw one of the rarest mammals in the Gulf of Mexico, the two amateur fishermen were already feeling lucky. They had motored to their favorite spot 35 miles off the coast of Pensacola Flat, downed a couple Miller Lights, and caught their third mahi-mahi when they heard the sound of air escaping a blowhole. "Then you start looking," said Ben Renfro, who grabbed his phone to film it. "Is that a dolphin or a whale?" But dolphins in the Gulf don't grow bigger than motorboats, and the dark figure Renfro spotted just before it sank back into the water looked much larger than his 26-foot craft. Seconds later, the animal appeared above the horizon again, first showing off a small dorsal fin, then gliding its trunk over the waves like a surfacing submarine. Back on shore, experts reviewed the video and agreed. It was almost certainly a Rice's whale, one of the most endangered whales in the world. Authorities estimate only around 51 of the animals remain, and they don't live anywhere but the Gulf. To avoid extinction, the U.S. government has estimated that no more than one can be killed or seriously injured by human activity every 15 years. Which activities threaten the whales the most is not a mystery. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, has cited more than 20 risks, including energy exploration in the Gulf, vessel strikes, and underwater noise. But although the agency has produced helpful science about the whales, NOAA has repeatedly delayed following rules and adopting measures that could help the whales survive those man-made threats. "The bureaucratic apparatus is slow to catch up," said Aaron Rice, an ecologist who studies the whales but is not related to scientist Dale Rice, for whom they are named. It raises this philosophical question of values, like how much do we value these animals that live in U.S. waters? On April 20, 2010, about 40 miles offshore from Louisiana, the BP drilling rig Deepwater Horizon caught fire. Within 2 days, 11 workers had died and the rig had sunk. The well that was left behind would gush more than 200 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico over the next 3 months. It was the largest marine oil spill in history. Rice's whales were some of the animals most harmed by the disaster. About 1 in 5 died after the oil slick engulfed their habitat, and those that survived became more likely to get sick or lose pregnancies. Their numbers dropped to fewer than 100, but the spill also prompted more attention to the whales. Before Deepwater Horizon, the animals were thought to be a type of Bride's whale, a kind of whale found everywhere from South Africa to Japan. After the disaster, researchers from NOAA and other groups analyzed bones that washed up on Gulf shores and conducted genetic tests. This was no subgroup, they soon realized. This was a completely new species. The ones in the Gulf were believed to be the last ones left on the planet. The newest great whale was also one of the most endangered, and it was right in America's backyard. "Every animal counts at that point," said Jane Davenport, a senior attorney at Defenders of Wildlife, a conservation nonprofit. "Every one you kill is another nail in the coffin." Losing the species would mean losing an animal that fuels the ocean's productivity by transferring nutrients from the seafloor to the surface, and back again, with every dive. Great whales also reduce carbon emissions. When they die, they sink an average of about 33 tons of CO2 that they've stored in their bodies throughout their life to the bottom of the ocean. That's more than 1,000 times the carbon a tree captures in a year. Experts say the whale's extinction would be an ominous indicator of an unhealthy Gulf ecosystem. And it would be a reflection of slow U.S. action to protect the whales. Federal laws mandate that NOAA list a marine mammal as endangered soon after a species is shown to be at risk with the best scientific data available. Typically no more than 1 year after the species is listed, the agency must also determine what habitat the animal needs to be protected. That earns both the animals and their physical home special consideration when projects are proposed nearby that could harm them, a constant threat in the Gulf. Nearly all the U.S. oil and gas extracted offshore is pulled from the Gulf of Mexico. Industrial activity is a fixture of the area. But NOAA has been years late meeting its deadlines, and though the whales were eventually added to the endangered species list, it still hasn't designated the whale's habitat. Conservation nonprofits have sued the agency 3 times since 2016 to urge it to comply with the law. The agency is also required to publish a plan for how the government intends to help the Rice's whale population recover to healthy numbers. NOAA hasn't done that yet either, though the agency has released an 8-page outline. The chief of NOAA's Marine Mammal Branch in the Southeast, Laura Engelby, said the agency is limited by its staff and resources and is doing the best it can to help the animals. She said the agency is in the middle of several restoration projects and is conducting outreach to spread awareness of the whales' dwindling numbers. In November, a part of a skeleton that helped scientists determine that Rice's whales were a new species will be added to a public exhibit at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. But Michael Jasny, a senior policy analyst for Natural Resources Defense Council, one of the nonprofits that has brought the agency to court for missing protection deadlines, said the repeated delays should be considered scandalous. "It's an extreme case showing the extent to which an agency will delay," said Jasny, "and that is really shameful, given that the species that are being managed are on the verge of extinction." In 2021, a group of nonprofits grew tired of waiting for NOAA to act. They petitioned the agency to impose a speed limit to protect the animals from at least one of their immediate man-made threats: ships. Gulf ports are busy. The Port of Houston exports more tons of cargo than any other port in the country. Since 2009, 2 Rice's whales have been killed or injured after ships hit them, and research on whales injured by ships over the past few decades shows that the strikes that seriously harm the mammals are often caused by big vessels that are moving quickly. So the environmental groups recommended that when ships 65 feet or larger cross a portion of the whale's habitat in the eastern Gulf, they be required to slow down to 10 knots or less. They also asked the agency to prohibit travel in that zone under the Florida Panhandle at night, when the whales float near the surface and are harder to spot. Slowing down ships to save whales isn't a new idea. North Atlantic right whales are also endangered. Around 350 are estimated to remain in the American and Canadian Atlantic. Along the U.S. East Coast, a 10-knot limit has been in place to protect them for more than a decade. Research indicates that lowering speeds to that level works. "Vessel speed is the low-hanging fruit," said Davenport, the lawyer for Defenders of Wildlife, one of the nonprofits that petitioned NOAA. "That is the most important thing that we can do right now." But after NOAA invited public comments on the proposal this summer, the energy and marine industries pushed back fiercely, and politicians who represent states where those sectors are top employers drafted legislation against it. On August 18, Rep. Clay Higgins R. proposed a House bill that would block NOAA from passing the speed limit until the government could show it wouldn't negatively impact commerce. A Senate version of the bill was later introduced by Bill Cassidy R. Terry Davis, the president of the American Association of Port Authorities, a seaport industry advocacy group, told NPR that a limit for just a few Rice's whales in the Gulf didn't make sense. "It's wildly overbroad and ill-conceived to force a blanket slowdown if there's only so many of them," Davis said. "And time is money, of course." After reviewing the feedback on October 27, NOAA announced its decision. It denied the nonprofit's speed limit petition. In a statement, the agency said it needed to focus on other conservation priorities and would try to get vessel operators to slow down voluntarily. But without a mandatory limit, the risk of ships injuring the whales is high across the Gulf. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel to see more.